It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all here. It is a real delight to have our special guest with us today, a very amazing person who has had quite an amazing experience over the past several years, an inspiration not only to her own people but around the world. It's my pleasure to welcome Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya to ASPI, the leader of the Belarusian opposition, the president-elect and head of the United Transitional Cabinet, living in Lithuania, first time to Australia. Welcome and welcome to ASPI. Sviatlana is going to provide some remarks, which I'm sure we're all very interested to hear her story. And then we'll sit down for a couple of questions, and I'd like the opportunity as well for people in the room to pose some questions to her as well. But Sviatlana, again, absolute pleasure to have you here in Canberra at ASPI. You do inspire a number of our team who are very excited to have you here with us today. Please provide your remarks to the audience here and online, and then look forward to having a discussion with you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Justin, dear Mr. Bassi, dear friends, thank you for coming. First, let's to thank the organizers of this event, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. It's really an honor to speak before you today. As it was said already, this is my first visit to this part of the world, and perhaps the first high-level one from Belarus in our history. But I feel here like at home already. I have just met Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister Penny Wong, and we had a very productive and fruitful conversation. And I hope that this visit will open a new chapter in Belarusian-Australian friendship. I express my gratitude to the Australian people for their support of Ukraine, but also Belarus. The destinies of both our countries are tied closely together. We are fighting the same enemy, the Russian Empire of evil, striving for the same goal, a peaceful and democratic future. Australia's voice for freedom has great importance on the international stage. We need Australian leadership in this part of the world, as our fight for democracy is not isolated. It is a global one. In fact, our nations are closer than we might think, because, for example, the Kostyushka Peak is named after the Belarus-born freedom fighter, and also Belarusians played a very huge role in Australia's military history. Hundreds of them fought for Anzac and sacrificed their life for Australia in World War I. Also, the founder of Maya Emporium in Melbourne was born in the Belarusian town of Krychev. Throughout history, Australia has been a safe refuge for Belarusians that escaped tyranny, first from Russian Empire, later from the Soviet Union, and now from Lukashenko regime. Thousands of Belarusians have made their homes here. They take part in public life and contribute to Australia's prosperity. Sadly, even here, some still face persecution from Belarusian regime. You know, from here, Belarus might seem a small and distant European country, but we live in an interconnected world, and where a threat to freedom in one place actually places in danger freedom everywhere. Today, our country, my beloved Belarus, is under Russian control. Putin refuses to recognize Belarus or Ukraine as sovereign nations. His neo-imperial policy aims to erase our identity. Lukashenko, dictator of Belarus, serves as proxy in exchange for money, power, and protection. He sells our independence to Russia piece by piece. Brutally suppressing our peaceful revolution was part of Putin's plan. In 2021, at Putin's order, Lukashenko started a hybrid war against Europe using illegal migration. In 2022, he allowed Russia to attack Ukraine from Belarusian territory. Russian missiles flew from Belarus to kill Ukrainians. Even today, children from occupied Ukrainian territories are illegally transported to Belarus. Russian drones fly over Belarusian territory to NATO countries, Poland and Lithuania. But all this happens against the will of Belarusian people. When the war in Ukraine began, Belarusians protested against it. Belarusian railway partisans sabotaged Russian military trains dozens of times. Hundreds of volunteers went to Ukraine to defend its independence. 8 of them already gave their lives in this war. Belarusian people don't recognize Lukashenko's legitimacy. He wouldn't stand even a month without Russia. He knows that and looks for support everywhere, including China and Indo-Pacific region. Of course, we all want peace. That is what we are fighting for, and what Ukraine is fighting for so bravely. But neither Putin nor Lukashenko wants this war to end. They need the wars because it fuels their regimes and justifies the repression. We see how Belarus is quickly becoming a military workshop to Russia's war machine. About 300 state and companies work for Russian military at the moment. Now they're building a drone factory with Russia to produce up to 100,000 drones per year. Based on Iranian Shahed models, key components come from China. We already see Belarus promoting these systems in Asian countries that are less concerned about human rights, about sanctions, or democratic reforms. These are not only North Korea or Iran, his traditional allies, but also Vietnam, Myanmar, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Laos. Lukashenko is not just trying to survive, he's trying to become a global arms dealer, exporting also repression, surveillance, and authoritarian ideology. Luckily, Belarus is not Lukashenko. There is another Belarus, often forgotten. Belarus of the majority of the people who voted for me in 2020, who wait for the window of opportunity to take their country back. Right now, any protest in Belarus is impossible due to harsh repressions. But their totalitarian regimes often fall unexpectedly. Nobody predicted the fall of Berlin Wall, for example, or Assad regime in Syria. And Lukashenko, dictator, is not forever either. We must prepare for post-Lukashenko Belarus already now. In exile, we Belarusian people have built alternative institutions of power. The United Transitional Cabinet and Proto-Government and Coordination Council as Proto-Parliament. We are united as movement, and we deliver. We are drafting a new constitution and reform plans. We start issuing our own passports to substitute to the national passports, as Lukashenko wants to deny citizenship to Belarusians in exile. I believe that the change in Belarus will be connected to the fate of Ukraine. That is why we fully support Ukraine and our volunteers fighting there. Dear friends, for my short political career, I realized that no one war and no one fight can be won if you're alone. We need allies, and I think that Australia can become one of our allies as well. And I really have some practical suggestions for you. First, keep a firm stance on Lukashenko and Putin. Maintain strong sanctions. Keep the regime isolated. Recognize the democratic forces as the legitimate voice of Belarus. Form groups for democratic Belarus in the parliament. Second, support our humanitarian initiatives. Australia can contribute to the International Humanitarian Fund for Victims of Repression. Belarusian volunteers, like Ukrainians, could undergo medical rehabilitation in Australia, for example. Third, keep our political prisoners in focus. Politicians can adopt political prisoners, like, adopt symbolically, share their stories, and call for their release. Fourth, support our accountability efforts. Lithuania has opened a case at the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. Another case at the International Court of Justice concerns discrimination against women. The forced deportation of Ukrainian children to Belarus must also be investigated and punished. And finally, help us to stop the joint Russian-Belarusian war machine. Lukashenko's schemes in Asia must be uncovered and dismantled. Dear friends, dictators learn from each other and coordinate their efforts, and the democratic world has to do the same. Our struggle is not only about Belarus, it is part of the global fight for democracy. Human rights and security are inseparable. Where human dignity is trampled, peace cannot survive. I really believe that Belarus can become a success story of transformation from dictatorship to democracy, and I really want Australia to play its important role in this journey. So thank you very much. Long live Australia, long live Belarus, and Slava Ukraini.
Well, thank you for those remarks. It was a bit of a call for action in many ways. Those practical ideas and initiatives, I think, are there and relevant for all of us. There are clear messages for democratic countries like Australia in terms of a firm stance against Lukashenko, sanctions, isolation, harrowing stories around deportation of children, constant hybrid threats. So really important messages. I think you will always be welcome in Australia, hopefully the first of many trips. But I think it does. The trip does come at an important time. I think no doubt you spent a bit of time this week with the Ukrainian ambassador. Obviously, it's always great to see the Lithuanian ambassador Darius here, a great part of the diplomatic corps here in Canberra. Bassi has been trying to ensure that Ukraine and Russia's war in the region is not forgotten in Australia, even though we're far away. We've got issues in the Middle East, issues between China and the US. So when you talk about trying to make sure that Belarus, and particularly the Belarus that is not the Lukashenko Belarus, is not forgotten, vitally important. Can we take a step back just for a minute before getting to a few of those issues? If we look back to 2020, Sviatlana, a pivotal moment for Belarus, pivotal moment for the opposition, for you personally. Most in the audience here today might be aware of that story. I think many people who are watching online might not quite know the story. So could you perhaps provide a quick snapshot of what happened then in 2020 and how it might have shaped these last 5 years?
So maybe I will start a little bit earlier, just to explain that Belarus was led by one person, dictator Lukashenko, for 30 years at the moment. And Lukashenko always was the most pro-Russian or pro-Soviet Union person in Belarus. And since he came to power, he started to drag our country back to Soviet Union past, closer to Russia. And nobody never asked Belarusians how you want to live, where you want to live, what alliances you want to join. With the appearance of internet and possibility to travel for Belarusians, people saw that there is another life, wonderful life in democracy. We visited European countries, seen the examples, and just started to ask, why we are left in this Soviet Union past, we're like stuck in the past. And all these developments brought us to 2020 when our peaceful revolution took place. In it was actually, I always was not in politics, I was mother bringing up two wonderful children, and it was my husband actually who became blogger. It became very interesting, to become bloggers with development of internet, and he just started, to travel from city to city in Belarus, asking ordinary people, how do you live? What do you want? What do you think about government? And people, just honestly answered his questions. And my husband became so popular, and people started to ask him, would you please participate in elections 2020? And he declared, yes, okay, I will. And Lukashenko was scared by this, and he put him immediately into jail. I'm with two children. My husband is in jail. But, it was the moment for me when I thought I should do something for my husband, but also for my country. And I stepped in instead of my husband. And I think that the regime registered me as the candidate for presidency just to laugh, to make fun, because the dictator always told that our constitution is not for women. Nobody would never vote for women in Belarus. But, I was joined by some other wonderful women, and we rallied over Belarus. And on the 9th of August 2020, we had elections. We were prepared that Lukashenko will, change the result, as we always did. And our IT specialists designed alternative counting of the votes. Very simple, using technologies. And we managed to prove that Lukashenko lost elections, that I won elections, but nevertheless, Lukashenko didn't accept the truth and unleashed the most brutal repressions and terror our people seen, for all the history of our country. So since then, 5 years passed. Repressions are endless. Every day, people are detained in Belarus till now, because Lukashenko knows that for 5 years he didn't manage to suppress will of the people for changes. We want democracy. We want pro-European future. We want independence from Belarus. 500,000 had to flee the country because of repressions, but we managed, to build strong alternative institutions of power. Our media that have been ruined in Belarus managed to restore their broadcasting from exile. Civil society organizations, parties, human rights defenders, trade unions, we managing, to continue our activity. Yes, from exile. Now it's very difficult to do something visible, in Belarus, but we really achieved a lot, and Lukashenko feels very fragile. It's very shortly.
It is amazing what you've been able to achieve. You've used the phrase, both in your remarks and answer, that the will of the people. I'm interested in what the political situation is right now. Is there still any room for dissent at all in Belarus? And is what you see your role as doing is holding those people, the will of the people that's been there for so long? You're holding that together?
Of course, in dictatorship, you cannot have a position that is normal for democratic countries, right? Because everybody who is opposing to the regime or supporting Ukraine or opposing the Russia, they are becoming enemies of the regime, and they immediately detained. So that's why the repressions are continuing, because a majority of Belarusians are against this tyranny in our country. But we cannot be very active in Belarus. Our movement went underground inside the country, people leaking us information, people making small acts of sabotage on their working places. People continuing, to meet each other very secretly, just discussing the events. People, in Belarus, even reading honest news is already bravery, because all free media are declared as extremists in Belarus. And if you, watch TikTok or watch YouTube videos, and KGB, we still have KGB, it's like special security service to Lukashenko. If they, for example, on the street, you can be stopped, your mobile can be checked, and if they see that, you're reading something or watching something, 5, 10, 15 years in jail. So this is the price, you're paying. But people find opportunity to read, to deliver information through VPN, using all the secrets chats and so on and so forth. We really have to be very inventive, very active, just to be, to do something, in Belarus. For example, once our cyber partisans hacked, these TV screens that are in shopping malls, and they hacked the system and they put my address to broadcast, and it was such a shock for Lukashenko how we managed. It was for about 15 minutes, endlessly, broadcasting my messages. It was fantastic, of course. Yeah, our cyber partisans doing, amazing job. Also, we have a lot of informants from the system itself. People who are surrounding Lukashenko. They're leaking us very precious information. How, for example, sanctions are circumvented, or about these new enterprises that are going to produce drones. How Lukashenko is enriched by militarization of economy, by producing military stuff for Russia, and we deliver this data to our allies, democratic allies, to impose sanctions on those entities. So just short, not too much space in Belarus, but we are using every inch, every centimeter of this space, to be presented. Why Lukashenko is still repressing people 5 years, just, because he knows as only he stops, there will be people on the streets, we will broaden our presence in Belarus. Lukashenko knows that he didn't manage to kill this belief, this hope in people for changes, that he's not supported. He lost Belarusian society, he lost Belarusian nation. So that's why he needs to use this brutality daily just to suppress the nation.
It is quite extraordinary what you've been able to do in exile. You mentioned that you're doing passports, constitution. These are remarkable things to be doing. Take us through a little bit of how you're doing that, but also the value that when you talk about trying to maintain hope within the Belarusian people, is the ability to do these elements like passports and constitution part of being able to, a strategy to maintain that hope?
Look, the most activity we are producing now is from exile. It's necessary condition, because we cannot do a lot in Belarus. And I'm really proud how much we have achieved for these 5 years. We managed to build very strong alternative institutions of power. We are building this virtual, if I can say so, powers in exile. We have Office of President-elect. We have proto-government, we have proto-parliament. And what is important, that we have solidarity of our allies who don't recognize Lukashenko, not working with him, but instead working with us. We formalized relationship with the European Union, with the USA, UK, Canada. It's very non-conventional approach, to dealing with the democratic movements or opposition, as we are usually called, because we are taking this space from the state, Belarus, that is seized by a dictator. But countries working with us, they don't send ambassadors to Minsk, not to legitimize Lukashenko, but they appoint special envoys or ambassadors to work with democratic forces of Belarus. It's really unprecedented steps. And we, as I said, we restored broadcasting from abroad, work of human rights defenders, civil society. We've taken care about our national identity that is being erased by Lukashenko and Putin inside the country. So we in such circumstances, Lukashenko deprived people of Belarus, those who live in exile, possibility to renew our documents. If your passport is expired, you cannot return home to renew it. Ordinary procedure. You cannot go to the embassy to renew it because it's forbidden. So the person is becoming stateless. That's why, we are working with different countries, for example, Lithuania and Poland, where most Belarusians are based, just to find solution how to legalize, Belarusians in these countries. But we are proposing systematic solution to this issue. Very soon, it will be 500,000 Belarusians without documents, stateless people. So we started to produce our own ID documents. We call it Passport of New Belarus. Again, non-conventional approach. It's very unusual, and it needs a political decisiveness, political bravery to recognize this passport and to show to dictators, you don't own people. We will find tools and find instruments to answer the challenges. We are trying to deliver. We are helping political prisoners. We are helping to our veterans of Russian-Ukrainian war. We are, fundraising for different cultural initiatives. We trying to take care of our nation, of our people by themselves. But again, as I said, we need allies. No one war and no one fight cannot be won if you're alone. It's about Ukraine, it's about Belarus, about other countries who need support. And I'm sure that it's moral obligation of every democratic nation to help those who are in need, who are in front line of fighting against dictatorship. Because what is happening in Belarus, what is happening in Ukraine is not only the problem of our nations or our countries. Because dictators also watching closely how democratic world reacts on these challenges. If democracy is undecisive, if democracy is not bold enough and allow dictators to cross red line after red line without, strong reaction, it is emboldening dictators. And they're making alliances, they're threatening their neighbors, they doing these provocations constantly. Democracy has teeth, and we have to study how to use available instruments and tools to counter dictators. We really, democratic world, need decisiveness now, because it's a very important moment for our history. Either tyrants will prevail or democracies. I really think that people who fight dictators will believe in democracy sometimes even more than democracy believes in itself. You have to become bolder. You have to believe in yourself. We are strong and not looking always like what will Russia say, what will other dictators say. No, we are strong. We have money. We have capacity. We have willingness, to prevail. Just do.
And you mentioned, someone who obviously has a lot of bravery themselves and is fighting against the authoritarian regime. Your husband. Tell us a bit about him now. He's been released and now he is supporting you on your journey.
Yeah, actually, my husband spent 5 years in jail. And this summer, with the diplomatic efforts of President Trump and his administration, 2 groups of political prisoners were released. Here I have to say that, of course, President Trump personally is involved in this process. But I have to underline that without 5 years strong policy of European countries, of Australia, Canada, UK, nothing, would happen. Only pressure works. All these sanctions that were imposed, this policy of non-recognition, policy of isolation, make dictators to change their behavior. And, President Trump stepped in and, started this process of releasing. Of course, I hope that more people will be released. At the moment, we have at least 1,300 political prisoners. It's a huge amount of people. And while releasing some, Lukashenko is detaining twice more. So it's just like revolving door. And we have to stop this. Not only release people, because Lukashenko using people as bargaining chips, just selling them for lifting of sanctions. We have to stop this systematically, on basic level. But returning to my husband, He spent 5 years in full isolation. Last 2.5 years, he was kept incommunicado. For those who don't know what it is when you don't have a possibility to write letters, lawyer is not allowed to visit you, no phone calls, no normal food. Nobody knows where you are and what is happening to you. For 2.5 years, I didn't know if my husband is alive. So this is how it looks like. He was released, and political prisoners in Belarus are treated extremely awfully, without any medical care, with very bad food. No access to hygienical facilities. So they are physically exhausted. My husband lost half of his weight, but morally, our political prisoners are not broken. Every day they were told in prisons, you are nobody, you will die here, the world has forgotten about you, nobody is fighting for you. But they knew that we are doing everything possible to rescue them, to save them, to release them. And this belief, this hope helps people to survive. Some people have died in Belarusian prisons, among political prisoners. So I'm really happy that my husband is free, but I always feel a little bit guilty that our family is reunited. My children can enjoy their fathers, but still, at least 1,300 families are broken. So many children are waiting for their parents, mothers and fathers. We have 180 women as political prisoners, so children waiting for their mothers as well. And you just cannot enjoy this happiness from reunification of your family because you immediately start thinking about other people. And my husband immediately joined to our movement. He feels this pain of political prisoners, and now he's trying to attract attention to the problem, mostly in the USA. And but our task as democratic forces to take care of these people, take care of political prisoners, their families, ex-political prisoners. And that's why a couple of years ago, together with Norway and Sweden, we launched the International Humanitarian Fund for Repressed, where countries can donate money that then will go to rehabilitation processes, psychological, physical rehabilitation. And actually, I asked Minister of Foreign Affairs and Prime Minister also to contribute to this fund, and it will send signal to the rest of Indo-Pacific countries, but also a signal to Belarusians that we care, that we understand your difficulties, your challenges. It's very important, for people not to feel abandoned, to feel that you're not alone in this fight, that the world trying to help you. Even symbolic steps are important. It's like, charging the battery of the nation, because every challenge, this pain, difficulties, it's very hard, and every gest of solidarity, every statement, every tweet about Belarus, it's like charge our battery and don't allow our energy to fall down.
All power to you in that regard. It's interesting when you talk about the pressure from the Europeans and the US in relation to releasing some of the political prisoners. But clearly, Lukashenko, when he is looking at the balance of his own power, he clearly has a reliance on Putin to stay in power. So I'm interested then in how do you think he is weighing up that balance that sees him at times release prisoners? Is he doing it with the blessing of Putin? Is he completely coerced and tied to Putin for personal reasons, even within that pressure from Putin, clearly what you're saying is that there is a clear message to Europe, the US, Australia, that a firm stance from the rest of us still does work, despite how tied and coerced Lukashenko is by Putin.
Lukashenko, all his governing played a role of a seesaw, leaning in the winters, he was leaning to Russia because he needed cheap as gas and oil. In the summers, he was leaning to Europe because he needs some money, some European money, investment, so on and so on. In 2020, when regime of Lukashenko was on the eve of collapsing, Putin came to rescue him. He backed up him politically and economically, and he helped Lukashenko to survive in our revolution. And since then, Lukashenko is fully the servant of Putin. He is obeying him. He is fulfilling all the orders. He's like paying debt, to Putin. And it's misperception that Lukashenko is balancing, that maybe we can split the symbiotic friendship. No, they're always like forever. Lukashenko is serving to Putin's interests, not to Belarusian one. He's ready to sell our independence, the sovereignty of our country to Putin just to stay in power. He doesn't care about Belarus. He cares only about his personality. So, he, as you know, provided our territory, our facilities, our infrastructure to invade Ukraine. He dragged our country into the war just to stay in power. He is terrorizing our neighbors, making constant provocations on the borders just to be useful to Putin. I think the only sphere where Lukashenko has sovereignty is repressions over Belarusian people. And, this releasing or not releasing people is like zone of responsibility of Lukashenko, and I think that Putin is not even interested. It's like internal issue. But of course, when Lukashenko started talk to Americans about release of political prisoners, of course, it's like also mark for Russia that you don't go too far. You are mine. Don't do this. But anyway, this negotiation process about securing release of people is on Lukashenko's shoulders. But believe me, Lukashenko always would like to fool Europe, fool President Trump, and we're in constant communication with State Department and administration of President Trump, and we explain how it works, and Americans are coordinating with Europeans on this topic. I understand that Lukashenko wants to sell people like as expensive as possible. It's like, goods for Lukashenko. And we warn our partners that Lukashenko has endless source of these goods. He can detain as many people, as he needs to sell them more expensive. So that's why we need systematic and irreversible changes in Belarus to stop this trade. But while America, uses this, carrot policy, to release political prisoners, they also have sticks. In the case Lukashenko is breaking the deal, they can impose new sanctions, become tougher. What is important moment here is that while President Trump and his team are following this humanitarian track on releasing people, European Union has to stick to its principled and firm position. No lifting of sanctions, no recognizing, no legitimization, no communication until these irreversible changes will take place. And we ask Australian government, to stick to European policy towards Belarus. We understand, President Trump, needs these victories. He is taking efforts to bring peace to Ukraine as well. But there are, issues and obstacles. For example, we need Ukraine to win on Ukrainian conditions. Ukraine cannot be cut as cake. Some parts given to Russia, some are left to Ukraine. The same about Belarus. It's not only about people released. It's about sovereignty, independency. It's about choice of Belarusian people. It's about non-legitimization of this regime. So we are heard, of course, we are heard in the USA and encourage them to continue release, but not giving too much to dictators.
It's really well said, and if I'm hearing you right, what you're saying to whether it be the United States, Europe, countries like Australia, isolate Lukashenko, but that doesn't necessarily mean absolutely no engagement, but the engagement needs to be pressure engagement, including sanctions, no legitimacy. So that does make sense. I'm conscious that there'll be a number of people who might want to ask you questions for the audience. Just one quickly, one from me while people are thinking about their questions. You mentioned China, and I think what's interesting from an Australian perspective, or countries in this region like Australia and Japan, is looking at why do we support Ukraine? Why do we support the opposition in exile, president-elect in exile in relation to Belarus, is not just because we believe in democracy, which we very much do, but because there's relevance beyond that for this region. And one of the aspects that we hear a bit about in relation to Ukraine is whether it be President Zelensky himself or the NATO leadership talking about China being the main enabler of Russia's war on Ukraine. You briefly mentioned China. What's the relationship there? Is Lukashenko, does he have some reliance or support there from China as well?
So actually, just if you look on the map of Europe, you will see that Belarus has very significant geographical place for transition of goods. And of course, China uses this corridor to deliver their goods, further to Europe. And their approach is very transactional. If Lukashenko can provide this road, this venue for selling goods, he is useful. We are communicating to him. If not, so we are looking for different ways, to earn money. For Lukashenko, China is important from the point of view of legitimization. He shows to the democratic world that, look, I don't care about you. I have such ally as China. They're visiting, each other, time to time. But as I say, China is very transactional, and we can use, this topic to put pressure on Lukashenko. For example, when Poland, after increasing migration attacks on the borders, closed Belarusian Polish border for a couple of days, and this is route for Chinese good. So China played constructive role. They also, talked to Lukashenko that, look, you have to do something because we need, this road. It had its effect. There were some changes in behavior of Lukashenko. The border was closed. Now, Lithuanian-Belarusian border is closed, but because of Lukashenko's attacks with these balloons that paralyzes the work of airports. Again, we will see how China will react, because this route is also important to Baltic Sea, for China. So hopefully that they will also put pressure on Lukashenko regime. So Lukashenko had to, as you say, balance, how to work with China. So that's why he have to make some concessions. And now is the moment to put more pressure, to make Lukashenko make more concessions, because of this. So, but on the other hand, of course, we see as dictators making alliances. They learning from each other. Lukashenko can offer, produce different military stuff for different countries, and China, of course, can play its role here. And we have to stop these collaborations, of course, because it can spread further and further. Because dictatorship and these tyrants, it's like cancer. Until you don't cut it to very last cell, it will spread further and further.
Yeah, no, well said again. And I think from my perspective, then adding to the list of what can countries like Australia do in addition to isolation and sanctions, firm stance, would be then to, in our engagement and our relationship with countries like China, who are supporting, whether directly or indirectly, even in a transactional way, that we explain to countries like China and others that we, as Australians, are of the view that it's unacceptable what they are doing. Any questions from the audience? And when the microphone comes around, if you can just tell us who you are.
Thank you. My name is David Miles. I'm interested in those that are living in exile. I actually have a friend from Belarus who's living in exile in Italy at the moment. And I mentioned to them that I was coming to this. And, you know, it's been obviously nearly 6 years since the 2020 election. There's been another election in 2025 election.
Mm-hmm.
For those that are living in exile, like this friend of mine, who are really have no choice but to try and build a life where they are and continue to, you know, build a new life outside of Belarus. What do you say to those people to maintain their hope? Because the longer this goes, the harder it is for anyone who is living outside to then potentially return. So what's your message to people like my friend?
You know, I absolutely fully understand that not everybody who had to flee Belarus because of repressions will one day return to Belarus, because people are building their lives, you know, making businesses, children growing up in different countries. But still, you know, I see the intention of the majority of those who fled to return to Belarus. You know, many people don't want to ask for asylum, for example, or refugee status, because we want, you know, to return. But of course, there will be those, you know, who will restart their life from the scratch. And I ask them, of course, it's your right. You know, there is no obligation, you know, to return to Belarus, but always remember your roots. Try to contribute to like a Belarusian topic. Learn Belarusian language. Study your children Belarusian. Contribute to our fight. Be useful as you can. Even if you live abroad, speak about Belarus. You know, it's so easy to spread information about our country, because there are so, you know, attention span is very short. And you know, so many crises in the world, and we have to fight for space for Belarus. You know, and if you don't forget your roots, if you don't forget about Belarus, it's also, you know, very important for development, you know, of our nation. Maybe you have business abroad. There are so many like Belarusian unicorns in the USA, for example, or if you have your business abroad, think about how to invest in Belarus, maybe how to open, you know, business at least in our country, because after changes, believe me, it will be very difficult period for Belarusians, because democracy is one thing, but to rebuild everything that Lukashenko has been ruining for 30 years, it will be a very difficult task. We will need investments. We will need new businesses, you know, coming to our country. So let's think in like strategically. So yeah, like no special advice, because I'm one of those who will definitely return, but just promote Belarus where you are. It will be like enough, small but very important symbolic step.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. I'm Melissa from the Department of Home Affairs. I wanted to just congratulate you as a woman. It sounded like what happened in 2020 was, and with young children, having your husband taken, but making that decision to step up was a big one. And I wonder how perhaps your role is it might seem like a soft question, but I think the world is changing in terms of how politics is done and the sort of way we need to engage with the future. I work in a foresighting team, so I'm thinking a bit about the future all the time. And how is your role as a woman in a very conservative country, in quite a conservative region? How do you feel you're speaking perhaps to a different sort of way of doing politics? Is that something you feel you can talk about, or are you just trying to exist in the current paradigm? And are you giving hope to women to live a different life in Belarus? I'm just wondering how your position as a woman in a difficult, conventional, traditional environment, how you feel that's also a part of your story. Thank you.
Look, thank you for raising this topic because women really played huge role in our present and continue to play a huge role in our civil society. Belarus was historically a patriarchal country as a post-Soviet Union one. And of course, women in Belarus were always underestimated. And while the world was developing this direction, this gender equality, women's rights in Belarus, it was not important topic for men authorities. But of course, 2020 again changed a lot because it was really women who were leading our uprising, our revolution. Because when our men were brutally beaten in the first days of uprising, women with flowers in white dresses went to the streets, stood in front of this brutal policeman, and just with such a bravery, with such a dignity. And our women maybe felt self-confidence at last. They saw that really we can. And the same about me. I also just felt normal as a housewife, bringing up 2 children. But when life puts you in such circumstances where you have to take all your strength, maybe discover new capacities, facilities, new character. So you just stand and do what you have to do. I honestly say that I still have this imposter syndrome that, I don't have, political education and, I have to work in this political field, but I had to learn everything from scratch. But maybe I'm lucky to have the best teachers ever, presidents, prime ministers, minister of foreign affairs. They were my teachers. I just was entering presidential cabinet, never known how to talk to presidents, and just you start talking. You just do what you have to do. Just overstepping your fear, looking for internal strength. Of course, I always felt support of Belarusian people. I knew that I'm not alone. I discovered how politicians are perceived differently in democratic countries and in dictatorship. Because in dictatorship, president or prime minister is like, superior rulers. You just not very slightly knocking the doors, afraid, and all the time. And here I see I was presented at this Q&A question time in the parliament, and I see how people so easily asking questions to prime minister, debating. It's very interesting, in quarreling, and it's normal. We have to understand that it's normal. It's much better than to have this pocket parliament whose task is to raise hands, just together, because they were ordered to do this. So when you live in democracy, when you feel democracy, your mindset is shifting. And in Belarus in 2020, it was a huge shift of mindset of Belarusians. And I really feel how our women are, blossoming. They start to believe in themselves. They start to raise the topics that never were important for Belarusian authorities, like gender equality, like women leadership. We together, in my office, together with Sweden, I suppose, we launched the Academy for Women Leaders. And it's so important for women to understand that, something is happening. I see how modest Belarusians are, because usually in the conferences where you can stand up and ask questions to a leader, Belarusians, this fear is still in them. How can I ask questions? What people will think about me? And we have to get out of this patriarchal, system. The world is open for us. We have to think differently, because democracy is rather difficult, honestly speaking. But this is the best from what we have. We had to learn how to live in democracy, and I really see that women are more multitasked. We can make several things simultaneously. We are more empathetic. We are not usually women are not competent to each other. We are trying to complement each other. We are supporting, other women because we understand how it's difficult, to be women in politics and in every sphere. And I am so glad to see that this gender equality in different parliaments and governments, and this is example for Belarusians, also that we have to achieve, the same level of equality. There will be, after changes in Belarus, there will be no even question if women deserve to be leaders. Definitely they do.
Very inspiring. I think probably a reminder about what Australia already has in terms of its democratic system and what you're fighting for. I think we've probably got time for another question here.
Thank you, Sviatlana. Thank you, Justin. I'm Max from the ANU Research School of Social Sciences. My question was, Sviatlana, are the institutional problems within Belarus, do you think, completely a result of Russian influence, or are there some institutional problems that are indigenous to or unique to the Lukashenko regime? Thank you.
Of course, there is influence of Russia, but look, after collapse of Soviet Union, the fate of different post-Soviet Union countries took different paths. We can take example of my dear Lithuania. They were occupied by Russia, and after collapse of Soviet Union, they, when they became finally independent, that very fast, started to get cut its dependence on Russia. It was difficult times for Lithuania. Lithuanians survived the difficult period, became a part of European Union, now outstanding blossoming country. Poland, after collapse of Soviet Union, was poorer than Belarus. But with good governing, with taking care about people, about development, now they're the sixth economy in the world. And Belarus, with its wonderful enterprises with potash, natural resources, will extract in the time. Because of poor leadership, we chose the wrong person in 1994. We chose a very populistic person. We people, maybe people were too overbusy with difficult period of life. Those poor times, people had to work hard and didn't want to be involved into politics. Lukashenko came to power. Immediately, he changed perspectives for Belarus. We had, this 3 years of independence. We had our historic red-white flag. Lukashenko gave his oath, presidential oath, with this flag. But when he came to power, he changed our symbols for Soviet Union ones. He started immediately push our country, closer to Russia. He just deepened this dependence on Russia. So this is the different fate. And for 2 years, it's very possible to turn country from democracy to dictatorship, very unnoticeably. He built his personal military apparatus that then, while dismantling parliament, and where parliamentarians who were opposing, just among these policemen came, were beating people, and and they started this era of terror inside Belarus. It's so easy to lose what you have. And Belarusian government, Lukashenko never cared about prosperity of people, only prosperity of his family. Oligarchs close to Lukashenko earning money, while Belarusians have rather low level of life. No investments, new investments into Belarus, because if foreign investor come to Belarus, he just developing business, and one day a government will come and say, "Oh, we like your enterprise, we like your business, so you go to jail and we privatize your business." So it's mafia in Belarus, and of course this dependence of Russia. It's Lukashenko's policy. He was taking endless loans, cheap loans, from Russia just to survive. He didn't develop Belarus. But he, was looking for, easy way, how to survive himself. So that's why it depends on a good management of every country, where how the country will develop. So now, of course, it will be, Belarusians who will suffer because of Lukashenko's actions. We have this, as I said, loans from Russia. Of course, after 2020, all new deals between Russia and Belarus have to be considered illegal. We don't recognize them, but we really need to build more relationship and trade relationship with European Union and cut this dependence from Russia, because it's really like neo-colonialism now. Russia wants to subjugate different nations like Ukraine or Belarus. Russia perceives our nations as naughty children. You don't have right to choose your future yourself. It's you are ours. We are like pulling you back in the Soviet Union past. But we are separate nations. We Ukrainians, Belarusians, Moldovans, Georgians, Armenians, all those countries who want independence, who want to choose alliances. But Russia treating us as satellites, as colonies. It's like neocolonialism. So, and just to stop this, we need support of all the countries.
I'm conscious of time. I did see, John, did you have a very, very quick yes/no question?
Yes, my name is John Angley. It almost relates to what you answered, but I'm always concerned about if the president of Belarus had a heart attack tomorrow and died, how would you fill that vacuum? Are there other forces inside the borders who would try to step in before you, as the obvious alternative government, got in place?
Regardless how Lukashenko disappears, or natural reasons, or some other black swans, we understand that we will have very short period where it will be like choice. Either our future leadership of Belarus will be pro-European, pro-democratic, or pro-Russian. And for this case, we have to be prepared. We have to have better offer for Belarusian people than the Russians. So that's why we are doing all this job. We are making coalitions of countries who are helping us. We already have a promise from European Union about financial support in after Lukashenko period. So we already propose an authorities who are working now in the system round table to discuss the future of Belarus. Believe me, for nomenclatura, for people who are in power, the independence from Russia is extremely important, and that's why we just have to be prepared with our strategic plan on this case of this vacuum. Believe me, for these 30 years, the Russians, wanted to build pro-Russian party in so-called parliament. They wanted, to more pro-Russian initiatives in Belarus, but they never succeeded because our society is homogeneous. We are Belarusians. We really feel our nations. It's only 3-4% of native Russians in Belarus. Very small amount. So we don't accept the Russians on our land. It always was only Lukashenko's policy. Belarusians, they really cherish national identity. So that's why it's the question of preparation. Who will be more prepared? The Russians. Now they're distracted with the wars. They are distracted with their internal problems. The victory of the war of Ukraine is such extreme importance, for us. And because Putin will be weakened, we are weakening Lukashenko and his cronies as much as possible. What I said in my speech, that we have to split elites now, to show them better perspectives than the Russians can propose. That's why these European perspectives are important. And I have to say that for these 30 years, Belarusians have never had choice, where to go, either to Europe. Nobody proposed them. And now, after 2020, it was the very first time in our history when Europeans started to say, "You are part of our family." Eastern European borders lays to eastern borders of Belarus. You're welcomed. Our doors are opened for you. So Belarusians never believed that it's possible to return to European roots. Now it's evident that it's possible. And as I said, it energizes people and energizes our authorities. It will be very difficult with this special military apparatus of Lukashenko that committed crimes against Belarusians, against humanity. They might, escape at this very moment. Like Assad, Assad regime, they looked invincible, very strong. Couple of days. This time dictatorship usually collapses very unexpectedly, but we have to be prepared for this. Thank you.
Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, it has been inspiring. I think whether it be the Belarusian people, democracies, as you say, humanity, we're all lucky to have you. ASPI and everyone here has been lucky that you have joined us here today. It is now over to us to listen to you and to continue to support you in everything that you're doing. We hope that we can play a small part in helping you be as prepared as you possibly can be for what you need to do. So thank you very much. Please join me in thanking you.
Thank you.